Have you ever found yourself in a relationship that feels strangely familiar? Not in a comforting way, but in a way that makes your stomach turn because you've been here before. Different person, same pain, different face. Same patterns, different name. Same ending. You promised yourself after the last time that you'd never let it happen again. You swore you'd see the red flags. You told your friends, your family, maybe even a therapist, that you've learned your lesson. And you genuinely believed it. Yet here you are again. If this resonates with you, you're not alone, and more importantly, you're not broken. What you're experiencing is one of the most profound psychological patterns that humans face, the compulsion to repeat what hurts us. Today, we're going on a philosophical journey into the depths of why we repeat toxic relationships. Not to blame you, but to free you, because understanding this pattern is the first step to breaking it. Let's start with a paradox that seems to defy logic. Why would any rational person repeatedly choose pain? Why would someone who's been burned keep reaching back into the fire? On the surface, it makes no sense. We're supposed to learn from our mistakes. Touch the hot stove once, never touch it again. Right, but human beings aren't simple creatures operating on basic stimulus response patterns. We're complex, layered, contradictory beings carrying entire worlds inside us. Worlds built from our earliest experiences, our deepest fears, and our most desperate hopes. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said, "No man ever steps in the same river twice, for it's not the same river and he's not the same man." But when it comes to toxic relationships, we seem to step into the same river over and over again, expecting different waters. This is the paradox. We repeat what we consciously want to avoid. Think about it. Nobody wakes up and says, "Today, I'd like to find someone who'll make me feel worthless." Nobody swipes right thinking, "I hope this person disrespects my boundaries and manipulates my emotions." And yet somehow, many of us end up in relationships that mirror our past traumas with uncanny accuracy. The truth is, we're not actually choosing the same relationship consciously. We're being pulled by invisible threads woven in our childhood. Threads we can barely see, but can definitely feel. These threads shape what feels like love to us, what feels like home, and what feels like normal. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Sometimes what feels like home is exactly what hurts us. To understand why we repeat toxic relationships, we need to talk about blueprints, not the kind for buildings, but the kind for relationships. From the moment you were born, you started learning about love, not through lectures or textbooks, but through experience, the way your caregivers held you or didn't, the way they responded to your cries or didn't, the way they made you feel safe or didn't. These early experiences created what psychologists call an attachment style, essentially a blueprint for how relationships work. This blueprint sits in your subconscious mind, quietly influencing every relationship you'll ever have. Imagine you're a child, and your parent is inconsistent. Sometimes they're loving and attentive. Other times they're cold, distant, or angry. You can't predict which version you'll get. As a child, you can't leave. You can't choose different parents. So instead, you adapt. You learn to read microexpressions. You become hypervigilant to mood changes. You learn that love is something you have to work for. Chase, earn. You learn that attention is scarce and you need to compete for it. Most importantly, you learn that uncertainty is what love feels like. Fast forward 20 years, you're an adult now. You meet someone who's emotionally unavailable, inconsistent, hot and cold. And here's the strange part, it feels right. It doesn't feel right because it's healthy. To your subconscious, this uncertainty feels like home. The anxiety feels like love because anxiety was intertwined with your earliest experiences of attachment. You're not choosing this person despite the red flags. In some unconscious way, you're choosing them because of the red flags. This is what Sigmund Freud called the repetition compulsion, the psychological phenomenon where we unconsciously recreate painful experiences from our past, hoping that this time we'll get a different ending. But why? Why would our psyche set us up for repeated failure? The answer is both tragic and beautiful, because we're trying to heal. Deep in your unconscious mind lives a fantasy. It's not a fantasy about princes or perfect romance. It's something more profound and more painful. It's the fantasy that if you can just make this person love you, this emotionally unavailable person, this person who reminds you of your parent, this person who triggers all your old wounds, then somehow, retroactively, you'll heal what happened in childhood. Think about it. If you can make someone who's incapable of consistent love finally choose you, doesn't that prove you were worthy all along? If you can win over someone who's emotionally unavailable, doesn't that rewrite the story where you weren't enough? This is the healing fantasy, and it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. You're not actually trying to be with this person. You're trying to go back in time and save the child you once were. You're trying to earn the love you needed then, but didn't receive. You're trying to prove that you're worthy of the attention that was withheld. But here's the heartbreaking truth. You can't heal the past by recreating it. You can't save the child you were by putting the adult you are in the same situation. The little boy or girl inside you who needed consistent love, who needed to feel safe, who needed to know they mattered. That child can't be saved by making a toxic partner change. That child can only be saved by you, the adult you are now, finally giving yourself what you needed then. This is why the pattern repeats. Each time you choose someone unavailable, you're unconsciously hoping this will be the time the story ends differently. Each time they pull away, some part of you thinks, if I just try harder, if I just become better, if I just prove myself more, they'll choose me. And if they choose you, it will mean you were always worthy. But the flaw in this logic is fundamental. You're seeking validation from people who are incapable of giving it. Just like you did in childhood, you're trying to draw water from an empty well. The philosopher Soren Kierkegaard wrote, "Life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards." In toxic relationship patterns, we're trying to live life backwards, trying to fix the past by reliving it. But healing doesn't work that way. Healing happens when we finally stop trying to change the past and start changing our present. Let's talk about something that might sound counterintuitive. Sometimes, toxicity feels safer than health. I know that sounds absurd. How could dysfunction feel safer than stability? How could inconsistency feel more comfortable than reliability? But remember, your nervous system doesn't distinguish between what's familiar and what's good. It only knows what's familiar versus what's unfamiliar. And to your nervous system, unfamiliar equals dangerous, even if the unfamiliar thing is actually healthy. Imagine you grew up in a house where love came with conditions, where affection was unpredictable, where you had to walk on eggshells. That environment, as painful as it was, became your baseline for normal. Your nervous system calibrated itself to high alert. You learned to survive in chaos. Now imagine you meet someone who's consistently kind, who's emotionally available, who communicates directly, who doesn't play games, someone healthy. You might think you'd be relieved, but often what happens is the opposite. You feel anxious. You feel uncomfortable. You might even feel bored. Because your nervous system has been trained to expect inconsistency. The consistency feels wrong. It feels like waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is why people often self-sabotage healthy relationships while tolerating toxic ones. The toxic relationship, as painful as it is, keeps your nervous system in a state it recognizes. The healthy relationship, despite being objectively better, puts your nervous system in unknown territory. The ancient philosopher Plato gave us the allegory of the cave. Prisoners, who have only ever seen shadows on a wall believing those shadows are reality. When one prisoner escapes and sees the real world, the sunlight hurts his eyes. The shadows were more comfortable because they were all he knew. Toxic relationships are like those shadows. They might not be real love, but they're the version of love you know. And sometimes, we'd rather stay with the familiar shadows than face the painful adjustment to real light. This is why breaking the cycle requires not just leaving toxic relationships, but learning to tolerate and eventually embrace the discomfort of healthy ones. Let's get scientific for a moment. Your brain on a toxic relationship isn't that different from your brain on drugs. When you're in an inconsistent relationship, someone who's loving one day and cold the next, your brain experiences something called intermittent reinforcement. This is the same principle that makes slot machines so addictive. When you don't know when the reward is coming, but you know it sometimes comes, your brain releases dopamine in anticipation. The uncertainty itself becomes rewarding. Every text, every interaction becomes a gamble. Will they be warm or cold? Will they pull close or push away? When they do show affection after a period of withdrawal, the dopamine hit is enormous, far bigger than if they were consistently affectionate. Your brain lights up like a Christmas tree. You feel relief, euphoria, validation. You feel like you've won. This is why toxic relationships can feel more intense than healthy ones. The highs are higher because the lows are so low. The moments of connection feel profound because they're so rare. Each crumb of affection feels like a feast because you're starving. Meanwhile, in a healthy relationship where affection is consistent, your brain doesn't get those massive dopamine spikes. It's more like a steady, calm, warm glow, objectively better for you, but less exciting to your reward system. Your brain, unfortunately, doesn't always know what's good for you. It just knows what's stimulating. And toxic relationships are very, very stimulating. This is compounded by something called trauma bonding, when you go through intense experiences with someone, especially experiences that alternate between pain and relief. Your brain creates powerful emotional bonds. So when you try to leave a toxic relationship, you're not just fighting your history and your patterns, you're fighting your brain chemistry. You're essentially going through withdrawal. The anxiety, the obsessive thoughts, the urge to reach out, these aren't signs you're meant to be together. They're signs you're addicted. Understanding this is crucial because it helps you separate feelings from truth. Just because leaving feels terrible doesn't mean it's wrong. Just because you miss them desperately doesn't mean they were good for you. Just because your brain is screaming to go back doesn't mean you should listen. So how do you break the cycle? How do you stop repeating the same painful patterns? The answer isn't simple, but it starts with one fundamental shift. You have to stop trying to heal the past and start healing in the present. First, awareness without judgment. You can't change what you don't acknowledge. Start noticing your patterns without beating yourself up about them. When you feel attracted to someone, emotionally unavailable, don't shame yourself, notice it. Get curious about it, ask yourself, what about this feels familiar? The philosopher Jiddu Krishnamurti said, the highest form of human intelligence is to observe yourself without judgment. This is where change begins, not in forcing yourself to be different, but in simply seeing yourself clearly. Second, grieve what you didn't get. This is painful but necessary. You have to grieve the childhood you needed but didn't have. You have to grieve the parent who couldn't show up consistently. You have to grieve the unconditional love you deserved but didn't receive. Stop trying to get it from people who can't give it. Stop trying to earn what should have been freely given. Let yourself feel the sadness of that loss, because only when you grieve what you didn't get can you stop trying to find it in all the wrong places. Third, reparent yourself. The child inside you who needed consistency, safety, and unconditional love still exists. And as an adult, you're the only one who can give them what they need. This isn't just self-care bubble baths and affirmations, though those can be part of it. It's showing up for yourself the way you needed someone to show up for you. It's setting boundaries. It's keeping promises to yourself. It's responding to your own needs with consistency and compassion. Every time you choose yourself, you're rewriting the script that says you're not worthy unless someone else validates you. Fourth, learn to tolerate healthy love. When you meet someone who's consistent, available, and kind, your nervous system will probably freak out. Expect this. Don't interpret the anxiety as a sign they're wrong for you. Recognize it as your system adjusting to unfamiliar terrain. Healthy love will feel boring at first if you're used to toxic love. It will feel too easy, too stable, too predictable. You might even feel the urge to create drama just to feel something. Notice these urges, don't act on them. Stay in the discomfort of stability until it becomes your new normal. Train your nervous system to recognize that calm is safe, not dangerous. Fifth, redefine love. You need to fundamentally redefine what love means to you. Love isn't anxiety. Love isn't having to prove yourself. Love isn't chasing someone. Love isn't fixing someone. Love isn't walking on eggshells. Real love is a place where you can exhale. Real love is consistent. Real love doesn't require you to abandon yourself to keep it. Real love sees you clearly and chooses you anyway, not because you've earned it, but because you're worthy of it simply by existing. Write down your old definition of love. Be honest about what love has felt like in your past relationships. Then write a new definition, what you want love to feel like. Refer back to this when your old patterns try to seduce you. Sixth, build your self-worth internally. As long as your sense of worth depends on someone else choosing you, you'll be vulnerable to choosing people who withhold that choice. Your worth can't be something you earn through relationships. It has to be something you claim for yourself. This requires you to believe you're valuable even when you're alone, even when you're not in a relationship, even when you're not being chosen by anyone. It requires you to be the one who chooses yourself first. Seventh, get support. You can't heal in isolation what happened in relationship. You need other people, therapists, support groups, friends who understand. The patterns we're talking about are deep, old, and powerful. They've been protecting you in their own dysfunctional way. Changing them requires support, guidance, and compassion, more than you can give yourself alone. Here's what I want you to understand. Repeating toxic relationships doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. It means you learn to survive in difficult circumstances, and you're still using those survival strategies, even though you're no longer in those circumstances. You're not damaged. You're loyal, sometimes to the wrong people, but loyal nonetheless. You're hopeful, believing people can change, believing love can win. You're resilient, you keep trying. Keep opening your heart, keep believing in connection. These are beautiful qualities. They've just been directed at people who couldn't receive them properly. The cycle of toxic relationships isn't a life sentence. It's a pattern, and patterns can be changed. But change requires you to do something counterintuitive. You have to stop trying so hard to make relationships work and start letting relationships come to you. You have to stop trying to earn love and start expecting it as your birthright. You have to stop seeing yourself through the eyes of people who couldn't see you clearly and start seeing yourself through the lens of truth. The Greek myth of Sisyphus tells of a man condemned to roll a boulder up a hill, only to watch it roll back down, forever repeating the task. The philosopher Albert Camus suggested that we must imagine Sisyphus happy, finding meaning in the struggle itself. But I don't think you have to be Sisyphus. You don't have to keep pushing the same boulder up the same hill. You can put the boulder down. You can walk away from the hill. You can choose a different path entirely. The cycle ends when you decide it ends. Not when you finally fix the toxic person. Not when you finally become good enough. Not when you finally earn the love you're chasing. It ends when you realize you don't need to earn it. It ends when you choose yourself. It ends when you stop trying to go back in time and start showing up fully in the present. If you found yourself in this video, if you recognized your patterns, your pain, your story, I want you to know something. You're already on the path to healing. Awareness is the first step, and you took that step by being here. You deserve love that doesn't hurt. You deserve relationships that don't require you to abandon yourself. You deserve to be chosen freely, not chased desperately, and more than anything, you deserve to choose yourself. The cycle of toxic relationships isn't who you are. It's just something that happened to you. But now you know, now you see it. And now you can choose differently. The question isn't whether you can break the cycle. The question is, will you?